Peace, 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 everybody. Once again, you're listening to G-Con. What we're going to be dealing with today is the third temple. For y'all that don't understand, the third Jewish temple. Now, why is this important? It's very important. We're going to deal with it. We are greatly affected by what goes on in the Middle East. Once again, we are greatly affected by what goes on in the Middle East. Whether or not we like it or not, it's something that we must deal with on a daily basis. It's something that we have to learn to put in our, or basically have it on in our agenda to deal with it, because this must be merged in to where when we look at our communities, we can build our communities, but on an international basis, we must know what's going on just as well internationally. And you know me, I deal with the biblical text. I don't just cover one area. I cover basically prophecy. I deal with history. I deal with science. So I'm trying to be versatile in all of the field. So when you're learning and you're increasing in knowledge, you must know about politicians. You must know about economics. You must know about everything that deals with the government system and also international ties. You must know about war. These are the things that you must know and tactics that you have to understand. So when we look at what's going on in the Middle East with the Jews, then we ourselves must look at those things and govern ourselves accordingly. Because first, once again, we are affected by what goes on. You may not think it, but you can build your community and you can go to war in your community, then you can die by a nuke tomorrow. So it's very important that we understand that. So this is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do. What we're gonna do, we're gonna watch a couple of clips, and then we're gonna watch one clip. I switch up to two, depends. And then once we watch that clip, then we're going to basically go into the text and see what the biblical text says and what is the prophetic word that it gives concerning the Jewish third temple, and why it's important that we need to know what's going to come about on building this temple, and the confusion, and also basically the wars that come about by doing this just as well. So let's jump to YouTube. I'm a screen share it here in a minute. Let me screen share here.
This is some shocking news. Unbelievable.
All right, so let's look at this clip real quick, and then we'll get back to the nitty gritty. Oh, 2-minute clip. Let's get to it.
The leading Arab cleric from Jordan, who controls declared that the third temple can be built. They called it a house of worship on the mount where the Dome of the Rock is. Listen, this is Israel News, and this is the official news station of the government.
Jews must be allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, and they can have a special house of prayer on the site. That's a surprising message from a leading Jordanian cleric, Sheikh Yassin al-Juli, who said that his view is based on the fact that the Israelites prayed on the site before the Islamic conquest.
مكان خاص باليهود ببني إسرائيل من اليهود للصلاة تحت السيادة الهاشمية والفلسطينية وباتفاق مع النظام الإسرائيلي بحيث يكون الحراسة والدخول والخروج تحت إبرة وسيادة الهاشمي. لا يعني هذا أبدا أن يمس المسجد الأقصى ولا قبة الصخرة، وإنما ذاك المكان الذي فيه أشجار في الساحة يخصص جزء منها للصلاة ببني إسرائيل. فأنا أتوجه بشكل رسمي إلى دور الإفتاء في فلسطين وفي الأردن بأن يصدروا الفتوى الشرعية التي تبين الحكم الشرعي لبناء مكان للصلاة خاصة باليهود.
This is not a good year for Christians living in the Middle East.
So you heard it there. Basically, what he said was that a fatwa should be issued. A fatwa is a religious order. And this is not just some sheikh. This is a ruling sheikh in Jordan, and Jordan is the one that controls the Temple Mount, the Hashemite kingdom. Bible prophecy is on the move. Subscribe to this website.
All right, so let's get that on out the way. Let's get that out the way. So we got another one here. Let's get the other one. Let's get the other one. This one is the real one right here. Where are they at? Where are they at? Alright. It's
pain from your day can haunt you at night. Don't let it. Advil PM gives you the healing sleep you need, helping you fall asleep and stay asleep so your body can heal as you rest. Advil PM for a healing night's sleep.
The Temple Mount is perhaps the most contested piece of real estate in the world. The Temple Institute, a not-profit organization, is dedicated to raising public awareness than the rebuilding of the Third Temple. Rabbi Chaim Richman talks to InfoLive TV.
The Temple Institute is a very unique organization because it was founded with the sole purpose of doing as much as possible to raise the consciousness for the Jewish people and really for the whole world as to the central role that the Holy Temple plays in the life of mankind. And this is really a basic principle of Jewish faith, that the Holy Temple is not just some magnificent synagogue. It really wasn't a synagogue at all, or just some beautiful building rooted in the biblical past of the Middle East, but rather it's seen by the Torah as the vehicle that brings about a certain spiritual reconciliation between all of mankind and God. And of course, every prophet of Israel tells us that the time will come when the temple will again be rebuilt. And actually, it's the era, the epic of the Third Temple, which is seen, for example, when we study Isaiah, as the time which will be unparalleled in human history, when all mankind will be at peace and united in the recognition of God. So everything that we do is really about the restoration of the promise of the temple. There's a number of ways that we go about this: the production of educational materials and curriculum that are used all over the world, and conferences and publications. But the main focal point of our work, where we're standing right now, is actually the reconstruction of vessels that can actually be used in the Holy Temple.
As Israel and the Palestinians prepare for another peace summit, the future status of Jerusalem has been thrust to the forefront. Many remain skeptical over the funds invested in the future reconstruction of the temple, if it will bring true peace.
Well, you know, a lot of people will try anything for peace, and John Lennon said, "Dull chance." And so why not try the one thing that God himself promises, for example, through the prophet Haggai, where he says, "In this place I will grant peace." You know, we try not to be political. We're really not a political organization at all. This is totally a religious and educational undertaking, but it's kind of hard to separate, for the Jewish people living in the land of Israel, the connotation of all of this. Obviously, the Holy Temple doesn't go in Hartford, Connecticut. It goes here on the Temple Mount, which is something that God himself declared. But basically, the idea is that, you know, we're really just trying to do everything possible as a declaration of our faith, that we believe that this is the destiny of Nora, blessed memory, used to say something very beautiful. When confronted with this question, you know, look at the geopolitical reality today, and the very last thing in the world that anyone expects is that there'd be some sort of situation wherein the Jewish people could rebuild the Holy Temple. He used to say, you know what, if we're the people that we're really supposed to be, the Muslims would come to us and say, could you please build the Holy Temple on this mountain and bring the divine presence back into the world? Because the Jewish people are instructed in the Torah to be a light to the nations. What does that mean? You know, we're called a kingdom of priests and a holy people, the chosen people. Now, not everyone is comfortable with that appellation. I woke up one morning and there it was. I didn't fill out a form. It doesn't mean that we're the best pediatricians and Wall Street brokers and film producers. We happen to be that also, but that might be a coincidence. But what it really means is that God has chosen the Jewish people to be the vehicle throughout the saga of human history, wherein he proclaims to the whole world that he exists. And you know what? When you look at a Jew in the world today, there's no other explanation for the fact that we're here except that there's a God in the world. And really, the Holy Temple is not an ethnocentric thing. It's not only for the Jewish people. When the Holy Temple stood, Isaiah says, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. And the whole world streamed there to engage in this direct relationship with God. And this is what we're promised when the Holy Temple is built, that it will once again become the focal point of the spiritual energy of mankind.
Years of research are invested into studying the various artifacts, musical instruments, vessels and robes worn, the metals, precious gems and cloths used. Once complete, craftsmen and artisans set about executing them accordingly.
Things that we are working on here and that are displayed and that have been seen by people from all over the world are not merely replicas or copies or models, but they're actually real, so they can actually be used in the Holy Temple. In other words, they are made according to the exact requirements of Jewish law, so that they, to use the phrase, are actually kosher and can actually be functional in the Holy Temple. And that is really what catapults this project into an exercise in not only faith, but action as well. Here we have one of the most magnificent vessels of the Holy Temple. It's the table of the showbread that sits in the sanctuary itself, in the holy area of the Holy Temple. The Bible describes to us in the book of Exodus that there's a golden table on which are placed 12 loaves of specially baked bread, which represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And these breads, called the showbread, are to be displayed before the Shekhinah, the divine presence in the Holy Temple at all times. This is a lyre as opposed to a harp. The lyre has 10 strings, and this actually is the instrument which in Jewish tradition is associated with King David. And in fact, there is a teaching in the Talmud that King David had a lyre suspended above his bed, and that at midnight a north wind blew on it of its own accord and woke him up, and in those wee hours he did his own private meditation with God and wrote the book of Psalms. So this is actually the lyre of King David. And one of the best examples of the complex research involved in every item is when it comes to the garments of the high priest. Here the Bible uses words referring to the colors of the weavings, the blue and the crimson and the scarlet. We know that these come from certain plants and certain animals, and there's a great deal of mystery regarding what these colors are. When it comes to the breastplate of the high priest, one of the 8 garments the breastplate of the high priest, which is considered one of the 8 garments of the high priest. The 12 stones of the breastplate of the high priest, of course, which are representative of the 12 tribes of Israel. These stones took the scholars and rabbis of the Temple Institute over a decade to reach a final conclusive identification of what the stones are.
Recently, a delegation of ministers from Papua visited the institution and contributed $10,000, gold bars, and precious gems. Richmond says people from many countries and all walks of life identify and support the cause.
This is definitely a phenomenon that we have seen over the years, which really makes perfect sense, because the Holy Temple is like a magnet that attracts people from all over the world. As we mentioned earlier, the verse in Isaiah, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all people." We have many people from all over the world that are extremely supportive and interested in the concept of the Holy Temple. And I think on a level of prophetic fulfillment, this is a very, very beautiful thing. We have people from all walks of life, from all over the world, who feel so motivated to do something to identify with the Jewish people and with the God of Israel. Really over 35 countries from all over the world, from as far away as India, and now, as you mentioned, Papua, many people throughout North America, all over Europe, many people from Qatar, which is kind of a surprise, as you can imagine, have come forward. Also, most recently, Papua and India, some from Indonesia, and even we had once a delegation from Mongolia.
Whatever the outcome of peace negotiations, Jerusalem will always remain the heart and soul of the Jewish people. And as Richmond says, one nation, really walking together as one people, around one heart.
The eyes of the world are really on the developments in Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the very word, is like a symphony to the ear for all people who really feel connected to the Bible. It's mentioned over 700 times in the Bible, and it's always synonymous with everything really that's good and right in the world. And the only city, of course, that was called the city of God, that God himself chose. But why? When we think about it, what is so special about Jerusalem? And we have to realize it is the secret that lies in his heart, the enigma of the Holy Temple, and the promise of living life on a whole different level of fulfillment. And that's really what the concept of the temple is all about. And when we look in earlier history, and we look at the idea of the Jewish people having exited Egypt, building the tabernacle in the desert, that's this idea of one nation really walking together as one man around one heart with God in its midst. And that message is not only for the Jewish people, but for the whole world.
All right, so we have it, and we see it. We stop sharing. So as y'all can see, plans to build the third temple by the Jewish people is going on, and it is definitely in development. Why is this important? Very important, because you know, and I know, this is something that in our text that is dealt with, that says that this must happen. And not only that, altercations come behind this. So let's deal with something real quick. Let's go to Matthew 21 and 9. Let's jump to 10, matter of fact. Jump to 10. It says, and when he was come into Jerusalem, all the city was moved, saying, who is this? And the multitude said, this is Jesus, the prophet of Galilee. The prophet of Nazareth of Galilee. I'm sorry. And Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple. Underline sold and bought in the temple. Very important, because I'm going to show you what's going on here. In this temple, we see that the people are selling and buying, basically. So Israel has used religion, also has taken on, used the religion to pacify the people and also to establish an economic and also a political system and ties with the Romans at this time. That's what they did. That's why, if you notice, it said, if we let this person, Yahushua, live, then the Romans will come and take this place. Why? Because they had emerged themselves, or basically tied themselves with the Romans, and made the house of the Most High God a house of merchandise for political and economical purposes. And they did this by way of impleading the religious or the religion on these people, and messing with the people's minds, basically. Watch this, what took place. And Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seat of them that sold doves, and said unto them, it is written. It is written. Watch this. My house should be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. So we see that Israel at this time began to be in dealing with economics and politics, and also religion, because they was religious people. So we see the ties between them and the Romans and those who oppressed them. And we see the people or the scribes that was put in office basically because by way of this oppression. Watch this. And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. So this place is the house of prayer. This place is a place of where healing should go forth, but yet and still we see that they are using or hiding behind religion for economic and political purposes. Watch this. And this goes on in the world today. We see this in the world today in the churches. People are hiding behind religion, basically, but their agenda is to gain in economics and also to establish more politicians to govern those economics. Watch this. This is what took place. Let's jump over to Revelations 11, because this is what we want to get to show you that this third temple is in the process, and is in the process of being developed, and it will prosper. And the scriptures speak on this temple. Watch this. Revelations 11:1. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod. And the angel stood, saying, rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. So this angel this angel gives John a reed and tells him to measure the temple of God. Now watch this. So this is telling us that there will be a temple. And not only will there be a temple, but we're going to show you the measuring and what takes place in this temple. Watch this. Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar. So he says, measure the temple and the altar and them that worship therein. So measure the temple, the altar, and them that worship therein. Three things to measure. Watch this. But the court, which is without the temple, the court which is out of the temple or without the temple, watch this. Excuse me. Measure it not. In other words, don't measure that. Now watch this. For it is given unto the Gentiles. In other words, the outer court is given to the Gentiles, but those that are measured, which is the temple and the altar and the people, is something that is consecrated or separated from the outer court of the Gentiles. Watch this. The outer court is given to the Gentiles, and the holy city should be tread underfoot for 42 months. So for 42 months, this city, or 3.5 years, should be tread up underfoot for this long. So the temple is there to be prayed therein, the altar to be sacrificed thereon, and the people that's praying therein, which is the priest, to basically do the daily sacrifices, as we see. Watch this. Let's look at this concept of what it means to measure or read like unto a rod. Let's jump over to Revelations 21 and 15. We're going to get some understanding here. Watch this. And he that talked with me, Revelations 21 and 15. And he talked with me, and he that talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city. Now let's see what he's for the measure. Let's see what he's measuring. And the gates thereof, and the wall thereof. And the city lies foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. So what is he measuring? Let's jump down a little bit. Let's see what he's measuring. I'm sorry. Let's see what he's measuring. Let's jump up a little bit. Matter of fact, it's up. Let's jump up. Jump up. Where am I at? $21. All right, let's jump to 10. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of the heaven from God, having the glory of God. And her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall gates and high, and had 12 gates. So he's showing him the city of Jerusalem and the wall, and basically showing him the measurements. And he's measuring the city. So when one measures something, we see that he's measuring the city of Jerusalem, and he's measuring the gates thereof, basically. So we see that this measurement is a great indication that something is going to be built up, or something that has been built up, basically. So we see that there. So let's jump down a little bit more. Let's jump back to Revelations 11. Let's jump back. And the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,203 score clothed in sackcloth. So we see that this city is to be basically built up. I mean, we see that this temple is to be built up, basically. And once this third temple is established, we see there will be 2 prophets, basically. And they supposedly, they will protect that city and protect those that worship therein. But they will be killed, though. But we ain't gonna go into that. Let's get a little bit more into this temple. let's jump to Second Thessalonians 2 and 4. Very important, because people will have you believe that this temple that's being talked about in these scriptures is the body, when it has nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. Watch this. It's a literal temple that will be built. Watch this. Let no man deceive you. 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first. Understand, we live in the times where people do not want any morality or no laws. They want to be lawlessness. So we see that, lawlessness or whatever. We see that. We see people no longer want to follow the natural laws or order of man and woman as being merged together to procreate after their kind. We see more murder, more stealing, more pride, more lust. We see all of these things going on. And one of the reasons is because the love of many has waxed cold, basically. And the love of God or morality or the one who we called on or invoked, or the one who basically we sacrifice to, is no more in our mindset. So therefore are we cast down, and our consciousness is wicked. So we're doing everything this contrary to the instructions of the Creator, basically. Watch this. Who opposeth and exalted himself above all that is called God. So in other words, there will be a man of sin, of who we call the Antichrist, that will be revealed. And this man must be revealed shortly. And once he is revealed, his plans and his intentions will be known, and it will be accepted by many, as we see in the scriptures. Watch this. Who opposeth and exalted himself. He exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God, watch this, underline this, sitteth in the temple as God. So what temple will he sit in? This temple must be a future temple, which will be the third Jewish temple, that he will sit in that temple and set up his image and his prophet, and will declare that he is God. Watch this. Who opposeth and exalted himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God, basically. Now watch what Paul say. Remember ye not that when I was with you, I told you these things. Paul told them these things of the Antichrist and the times to come. And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. In other words, the mystery of iniquity, or the Antichrist spirit, is already at work amongst the people, because the love of many has waxed cold for God. So therefore they are Antichrist. So the spirit is already at work, but the actual he, or the actual person, has not come yet, or has not been revealed yet. Watch this. It says, and something is holding him up. Something must be taken out of the way so that he can be revealed. And that thing that must be taken out of the way is in the book of Revelations 1 through chapter 6. And you will see that in between those chapters, something is taken out of the way. And in chapter 6, that's when of Revelations, that's when the Antichrist is revealed, or the white horse rider, he is revealed. And what that thing that must be taken out of the way is the church. The church must be taken out of the way. The church is the one, of the people that are the ones who is holding up the coming or the exposure of the Antichrist. They are the ones who are making the objections and also raising standards against certain laws to cause them to be delayed until the time should come to where the man of sin is revealed. Watch this. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let. In other words, right now, he that allows, which is the church that allows the spirit of Antichrist now that is running rapidly. We are the ones who basically we're dealing with it now, but for the most part, eventually we're going to be taken out of the way. And once we're taken out of the way, the full scale plan of the Antichrist will definitely be revealed with his followers and him. And then watch this. And only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And then shall the wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. We know that the Antichrist will be destroyed in the book of Revelations, as we see. So we can see that in the book of Revelations of him being destroyed with his false prophet and thrown into the lake of fire. Now watch this. Let's jump into something real quick. Jump back to Daniel. Daniel 9:27. 9:27. It says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Underline that. There should be a covenant confirmed with many for 1 week. And with many. And this covenant is the covenant that will allow the Jews to have peace in their land and build their temple. Understand that. It would allow them to build their temple without war, due to the fact of we see that there will be much altercation if this peace treaty, or if this did not take place. So there must be a covenant that must be confirmed, basically. And that covenant that must be confirmed is someone coming along trying to confirm the covenant that was given to Israel in dealing with the land. So they're going to confirm that covenant, basically, but then we're going to see what's going to take place and going to happen. And as we just seen on the broadcast that I showed you guys, the Jordanians had already said that it was a place of prayer before they even the Arabs had came and took it over. So they're going to let them actually build, I guess, with it standing beside the mosque or whatever the case may be. I don't know how that's going to work out, but not only are you going to have extremists, religious people upset about that are Arabs, you know, and not just Arabs, but the Islamic world in general, you know, that's going to be an altercation and a problem there. But I guess the politicians are going to work it out some way amongst themselves. But you always got your regime, or you always got your people that's on the side that's not going to allow that to happen. The most religious sect of people, basically, that's not going to go for that. Watch this. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. He who, we say that this verse is dealing with the Antichrist. We say that he will be a great dictator, and this dictator, once he is revealed, that he will confirm the covenant that was put forth of the children of Israel to build this temple, basically. Watch this. And for the covenant, and for just the promise in general that was given to them. Watch. And in the midst of the week. Now understand this. When we're dealing with the book of Daniel, this book gives us 70 weeks, right? And we see 70 weeks in this book, in the book of Daniel 9 and 24. I mean 9 and 24 through 27. Now, when we see these 70 weeks, the 70 weeks consist of 490 years. They're in 3 divisions. The first week consists of 49 years, which took them to build basically the temple. The temple and the walls, basically. The city. The second division deals with 483 years. until Christ the Moshiach came down, basically. So we have I'm sorry, not 483 years, 434 years. I'm sorry, 434 years. So we have 434 years for the second division, right? The first division consists of 49 years. The second division consists of building the walls in troublous times until the Messiah, the Prince, until he was cut off, basically. So that's 400 as a total with the 49 and the 434. That's 483 years total. 70 weeks. I told you 70 weeks basically consist of a total of 490 years. So there remaineth a week left. There remaineth a week left. So it's called 70 weeks. So you have a total of 69 weeks. I just gave you that. I just gave you the 49 years and the 434 years, which equals out to 483 years. That's a total of 69 weeks. Now we have the remainder portion, which is listed in this portion 9 and 27. It says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And 1 week consists of 7 years, because the whole portion I just broke it down to you consists of 70 times 7s, basically, or 70 times 7, and it totals out to 490 years of a total of the total weeks of 70 weeks, basically. So the last week, which we know a week in Hebrew consists of 7 days. So these weeks foreshadow, basically the last week foreshadows 7 years. But in the midst, in the beginning of his 7 years, he confirms a covenant, the Antichrist. But in the midst of that covenant, or 3.5 years later, guess what he does? And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of that week, or 3.5 years later, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblations to cease. In other words, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblations to cease in that land. This is the abomination of desolation that he will do when he was, as we see, that he will cause it to cease in the third Jewish temple. And once he causes it to cease, he will go into the temple and declare that he is God, and he will set up his image according to Revelations chapter 13 just as well in the house of God, basically, and cause much desolation. Watch this. Of abominations, he should make it desolate. In other words, he should cause, hold on for a minute. In other words, he shall cause the sacrifices. The oblations consist of the daily sacrifices. There was a morning and an evening sacrifice. He's going to cause that to cease. And he's going to himself initiate his sacrifices with and cause much desolations because of the overspreading of abominable things on the altar. Watch this. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. Make what desolate? Make the temple desolate. Even unto the consummation, or the end, until the ending of the 70 weeks. Until the ending of the rest of the 3.5 years, he shall, remember, it's a week. He established a week with them to confirm the covenant. In the 3.5 years, he breaks that covenant. And after that, he starts to the daily oblations to cease for 3.5 years. And as we see, we already know that the outer court of the Gentiles was given unto them already. They had the temple for the worship, but the outer court was given unto the Gentiles. So now he breaks that covenant 3.5 years later and come into the city, come into the temple, and also stops the sacrifices that was in the temple just as well. This is what this scripture is telling us in Daniel and also Revelations and also in 2 Thessalonians when it says that he will be seated in the temple. Basically, seated in the temple. We're not talking about no spiritual or the body as a temple. We're talking about a literal temple that will be built, as we've seen and viewed when we watched recently earlier. If you did not see that, but you can always go back and see it. I put two videos on at the beginning of my show where you can see the dilemma that's going on or what they're trying to do, basically. And watch this. And that determined should be poured upon the desolate. In other words, that was determined should be poured upon the desolate. He himself is desolate. So therefore, as we see by the brightness of the Most High's coming, and also the vows that we see that will take place in Revelations will be poured on the desolate, on those that are wicked or his wicked behind, basically. Now watch this. Let's jump. Let's jump to 11 and 45. No, not 11:45. I'm sorry. Matthew 24 and 15. Watch this. We just talked about that. It says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. In other words, when you see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place. Now understand this. This is not talking about 70 AD right here. What this is talking about, now there is some text in here that deals with the temple being destroyed and later on being desolate unto the ending of times, which is past 70 AD, unto the ending of times. 70 AD was not the end of the rule of the Gentiles or the basically the time of the Gentiles. The time of the Gentiles is still now, basically, as we see. So if we're still in the time of the Gentiles, then 70 AD was not it, basically, because these things should happen until the ending of the time of the Gentiles. Watch this. Then let them which be in the mountains of Judea flee into the mountains. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. We ain't got to go into that. Let's go. Let's jump to something else. Let's jump to something else. Now understand this. In order for this to come about, the Jews themselves must become victorious or be in victory or have victory over the Arabs. Once again, they must get victory to gain control of their city to even establish or either get in some type of tie or merging with this dictator to cause them to be able to build this temple. That's the first thing. Just wanted to bring that out. So they must do that because the Arabs are not just going to let you come in and do none of that without establishing some type of ceasefire or whatever the case may be for them to be able to build this holy place or this site. Okay, so let's jump to I want to show y'all there's definitely people. Let's jump to Zechariah 12. Zechariah 12. There's definitely people that's in this city that are Jews. Zechariah 12 and 1. Watch what he says. Let's jump to Zechariah 12 and 2. Zechariah 12 and 2. Watch what he says. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and against Jerusalem. So against Judah and against Jerusalem. In other words, the people of Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces. Though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it, and that day, said the Lord, I will smite every horse in astonishment and his rider with madness. So we see that in that day, Jerusalem will be a place of burdensome to all places, all burden. People will have Jerusalem on their mind, basically. It will be a burden unto them. Let's jump to 14 real quick. He said he's going to gather all nations around Jerusalem to battle, to go to war. This is why this is very important, because these wars that we see, Iran has already said that they don't want nothing to do really with Israel, let alone probably America for the most part, unless they tricking us to do business with us to get some type of superpower or nukes established to destroy Israel. And once they destroy Israel, then they said they coming for us just as well, for America. Watch this. Zechariah 14. Once again, here he is again. Zechariah 14:2. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. Watch. And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished. And half of the city shall go forth into captivity, the city of Jerusalem. So for those that are saying that there is no Jews in Jerusalem, you are lying. I'm not talking about in Israel. I'm talking about in the city of Jerusalem. Israel is a pretty big place. So I'm talking about in Jerusalem. Let's watch what it says. The city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity. In other words, half of that city going to go forth in captivity. And this going to be in the event of them three, after he breaks that covenant, the 3.5 years and goes into that temple, he's going to take half of that city into captivity. Watch. And the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. And then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations. Why would he fight for a people that is not his people if those were not, for people that's not his people? Why would he do that? He's fighting for those people because those are his people. See, I've been telling people that the Jews or the Hebrews are not just, so to speak, like they say, black. You're dealing with people that says that he said in the scripture, he said that Japheth will dwell in the booths or the tents of Shem. When anytime you dwell in the tents of the Shem of somebody, you become a people with them people. That's the first thing. The second thing is these people have been on every continent almost. But for the major continents they've been on, it's been Jerusalem. It's been Asia, Europe, and Africa. So being a Hebrew is not a racial thing. It more so deals with a diversity of races. In other words, it's not just one racial thing or just one person is just a black thing. No, it's none of that. When you are a Hebrew, the Hebrew takes it as if one will go and have sex with a woman and she is a European. When that baby that child is considered a Hebrew if the father is a Hebrew. So if that child go out and get him a white woman, and then his children go out and get them white women because they're in that land, so possibly they're going to take unto them on those people, then what do you have? A race of European Jews. Now, when we deal with the Ashkenazis or the Khazars, right? This is what people don't understand. The Khazars around about 700 to 800 AD, whatever case may be, was established, right? Now, evidently, the Jews went to the Khazarian Empire. Evidently, they mingled with them. So now you have two people that are coexisting, as we see what took place in the times of the Maccabees when the Edomites was made to be subject and to come and be circumcised and to live with Israel, and they became Israel because that's the laws of Israel. So you have these people, the Khazars, that are made to basically take on to convert, and they already got Jews amongst them. And not only that is, so they convert to Judaism, right? Or they convert to Israelites, or whatever the case may be. Then later on, they're pushed onto to Ashkenaz or Germany, and they're called German Jews. I don't find that ironic that you can't say that they're not really Jews, because when you look at it, Israel was mingling with them people. If you look at Israel today, what is Israel doing today? Israel's not just having relationships among themselves. Israel is having relationships among other nations. As the scripture says, they will dwell, Japheth will dwell in the booths of Shem. That's common sense. So the term Ashkenazi Jews just deal with German Jews. It deals with the fact that you have Jews that went to Germany, and they called German Jews. And just like you had Paul was in Rome, and he was called a Roman, but he was a Jew. He was a Hebrew Israelite. Same concept. Or you have your Sephardim Jews, Sephardim Jews, Spanish Jews. Why? Because where they dwelled at, until they was pushed down into Carthage, I believe, and then they spread it the Jew religion down there just as well. And this is the concept. So they say, well, these are not Jews that are in that land, because they say that they was converts or whatever the case may be. They don't know that. They have no proof to prove that. Matter of fact, not at all. Matter of fact, when you look at it and you deal with it, the priest that we see in Book of Revelations is in this temple, and that is in this temple, and that are basically worshiping in this temple. They are measured and protected, basically, as we see. Why is that? The outer courts is given to the Gentiles, but they are protected to do the daily sacrifice until the Antichrist comes in 3.5 years later. So we have to look at that. And then make it so bad. Let's jump back to 11 real quick. And then when I just read to y'all, we're going to see that in the city, in Zechariah 14:2, there are people that's in Jerusalem that are Jews. So it's a lot of lying going on out here. To try to make the coat of Joseph not to be many colors, which Joseph deals with Israel, it's folly, because we know Israel was many colors. Watch this. They have just as much as right. And then so look, some people will say this. They will say that how they're Jews when they don't fit Deuteronomy 28. Well, hold on for a minute. We just read that there's going to be a temple established. In order for a temple to be established, they must be dealing with politicians and also economics, and also dealing with their current religion. Matter of fact, they got more of the oracles and more. You wouldn't know. You listen. Let's be honest. You wouldn't even be dealing with the Israelite faith or the biblical text if it wasn't for them preserving the things that they got now. You got to give homage. You can't be playing no games. Whether or not you want to, or whatever the case may be, you still got it. It was more so preserved with them than it was in anybody else. So you're going to get mad because I said that, but I don't really care for real, because I know what it is. And even though they're living wicked, the Bible says that the kingdom of God was given to a nation to bring forth the fruit thereof. This is why the kingdom of God was taken from them, because they was dealing more on the political and the economic basis than the actual precepts and instructions of the Most High God. So we see that. I'm not knocking that, but for the most part, we know that you must that these people have that they will be wicked, because the Bible specifically says that he will turn ungodliness away from Jacob. Let's jump to that real quick, because I ain't got to lie to you. We can jump right to it. Watch this. Romans 10. So when Yahushua will come, it says that he will turn ungodliness away from Jacob. And this is what Paul is talking about. So you saying, well, they not the Jews because they this and that, and they just ain't going this and that. Nah, you got your Jews that's going through that, but you always had, as you see, your politician and your economic Jews, as we see when we look back in Jesus' time. You always had them. Always. And then not only that is, look at Hadrian's Market. See, y'all talk about 70 AD, or either the preterism will talk about 70 AD, and they tell you that they was led away captive in 70 AD, right? And then they was gathered. Well, hold on for a minute. After 70 AD took place, why don't they tell you about Hadrian's Market in 135 of the Covert Revolt? Why don't they tell you about that? See what I'm saying? They don't know anything about that. Because during that time, the Jews was trying to get their temple built back again, and they wasn't fully dispersed until after 135 AD. Then they was dispersed into Europe and to Asia and then Africa. Then they was, until they finally begin to start coming back to home. But there was always division or sword in the house of Israel. If you say that you are Hebrew, hey, welcome to it. Them is your brothers over there, whether or not you like it or not. And I don't mean Esau, because they are not Esau. Esau is those Arabs that's warring against that land. That's who Esau is. Esau is your Palestinians. And we're going to deal with that later on in the week, probably this weekend, and bring out that too just as well, and show y'all who Esau is. That's who Esau is. That is not Esau in that land. This you call the Jews. Esau is confederate with Moab. Esau is confederate with Ishmael, Hagarenes. Esau is confederate with Ammon, Gebal. That's what it is. That's what it is. Psalms 82, Psalms 83, Obadiah chapter 1. What does it say? Those who you are confederate with have deceived you. Who deceived them? The Nabateans pushed them out their land and to the edge of the borders and into Hebron. And this is why when the Romans came down, they looked at it and they called the Edomites, they called them Idumea. And guess what? Herod was an Edomite and Herod was an Arab. Look it up. Think I'm lying? He was an Arab. In that land, when they came in that land in 70 AD and those legions came in and took over Israel, guess what? Those were Arabs. The eastern portion of the Roman Empire, centurions, about 6 legions. The majority of those legions was Arabs that came in and took over that land. So let's go to Romans 10 real quick. We ain't gonna lie. I'll tell you the truth. Romans 11, matter of fact. Watch this. Romans 11 and 25. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel. Watch this. Until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. In other words, the time of the Gentiles, rule be come in. Then would the blindness in part be taken up off of Israel. Watch this. And so all Israel should be saved. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn ungodliness away from Jacob. Ungodliness got to be turned away from Jacob. Watch this. For this is my covenant to them, when I shall take away their sins. As concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sakes. As concerning the gospel, which is the message that has been given to the Gentiles to preach into the world, they are enemies of that gospel. And we see now that the Jews or non-Messianics do not believe in the gospel. The Jewish people, they don't believe in it. That's why they're in the position that they're in. So whether or not you like it or not, them your brothers. I don't care what you say. Rabbi so-and-so is your brothers if you say you're a Hebrew. And concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sakes. But as touching the election, they are beloved for the Father's sake, because there is an election, it is among them, and they are beloved for the Father's sake. But as concerning the gospel, they are your enemies. They enemies of the gospel. They antichrist. Understand that. For as ye in times past have not believed, yet have not now obtained mercy through their unbelief, even so have these also now not believed. They don't believe now. They don't believe. So when Christ come back, or the Moshiach, he's coming back to a nation that does not believe. And if you try to go to Revelations and use the synagogue of Satan, that is not the people that saying they are Jews, or white people that saying they are Jews. That is basically Jews that he said they're saying they're Jews, but they're not circumcised in heart, or do not practice the Jew religion to a full or to a T. So therefore he said, you are not Jews because you're not circumcised in heart. And Paul taught on that. The synagogue of Satan is none other those who persecuted basically those that were followers of Christ, or they dealt with the gospels. There was enemies. They was enemies of the gospel. These are your synagogue of Satan. Paul told you that. That's why he made the distinction between what a Jew is, one that is circumcised in heart, not one that's saying that he is a Jew by profession of what's called of his flesh or his religion. Nah, circumcision of heart. That's what matters. That's what we have here. So watch this. So we know that there will be a third temple set back up. We cannot deny that. There will be a third temple. Whether or not you want to say that it's Israel, hey, we just read to y'all scriptures that confirms that there will be Jews that's in that place, and they will be dealing with that. Watch this. Watch this. Jump back to 11, and then we're going to close on that note. Watch this. Revelations 11 and 12. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. Excuse me. In the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the tenth part of the city. Remember, we told y'all that some of the part of the city will go into captivity. It will be portions of Israel. Will have earthquakes around it just as well too. But this is concerning the city. Watch. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000. 7,000 men were slain in Jerusalem, the city. Watch this. By this earthquake. And the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to the God of heaven. There's a remnant that is in Israel. So we must deal with that. The remnant that was left, or the remnant that's in that land. And then we also have out of Isaiah 11, where we see where Jews are coming back to Israel from these different spots and different places. But you guys got it saying like they all are in America, or, off the coast, and all. Nah, they right there just as well. Let's not get it twisted. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, that's what I wanted to bring out. Like I said, you can go back and listen to it, and view it. But the third temple is something that we must realize and understand it is important, because as we begin to watch the different stages that take place in our society, especially to deal with the biblical text, which we look at it as something that's prophetic, or something that we see that's coming to pass, that's being shown to us by the foreknowledge of the Creator. So we're looking at these things, and as we look at these things, we must realize that we must keep track of that and say, well, this is where this time is at. This is where we at with this. You know what I'm saying? Because what goes on across the water, you are greatly affected by it. You may not think that you are, but you definitely are. You know, and we can't get away from that. You know, we can build our communities, and that's cool, and that's what we need to do. But we have to understand international things just as well. We got to understand these things, because if we don't, we can be building these community, but yet and still, the government and then also the international leaders are in so much chaos to where nukes everywhere, bombs everywhere, war everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So understand it, and that you're not just living in this world alone in your community. There's so much world is out there. I just wanted to bring that out, let everybody know about that. And what is it? It's 8:51. I'm finna get up with some of the brothers. I guess they got some classes going on, and I'll holler at y'all to the next appointed time. Y'all see me either tomorrow, most likely tomorrow. Y'all see me, and then coming with a topic. I know most people don't deal with the prophetic topics that's in the Bible, but I do. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times I ain't even really put together no notes for real. I'm just freestyling off the top of the head. So if I do get some notes together, then it'll be a little bit more better. But this is just a quick little lesson that I wanted to give. And for those that know, we had a conversation about this the other day about the Ashkenazis and different things. As a matter of fact, while we here, I can do this. Let's watch a real quick clip of the Ashkenazis. Stay with that real quick. Let me grab this. Hold on, y'all. Grab this clip real quick. We can watch this and then we can close it on out. But I want y'all to see this real quick.
Let's look at a theory that many people believe. It's one that
I'm just going to show a little bit of this, and then y'all can always go to it yourself and watch it. I'm going to share my screen real quick.
I also believe too, until I looked into it for myself. The theory comes from a book written in 1976 called The 13th Tribe by a man named Arthur Koestler. In the book, he claims that the Ashkenazi Jews, these are the Jews that had gathered in Europe around the Middle Ages, were descended from an area in the east called Khazaria. He claimed that the Khazars were a white race of people and that their royalty converted to Judaism for political reasons around the year 800, even though they were not ethnic Jews. And then they forced the population to convert as well. Then they claimed that these people migrated to Europe and became what we now call Ashkenazi Jews. Therefore, they say that the Ashkenazi Jews, which constitute the majority of modern-day Jews, are not Jewish at all and have no claim to the land of Israel today. I have found that this theory is not correct at all, and there's plenty of evidence that proves it isn't. One clue should be that the people today keep pointing back to this book written in the 70s to support this claim, instead of pointing to recent papers or historians or archaeologists that prove it. That's because modern historians and archaeologists, even with Arab sympathies, don't buy Koestler's theory. One example is a scholar named Bernard Lewis. He's a man who the Encyclopedia of Historians and Historical Writing calls the, quote, most influential post-war historian of Islam and the Middle East. He's also a person with a long history of defending the religion of Islam. He said this about Kessler's book, The 13th Tribe, quote, this theory is supported by no evidence whatsoever. It has long since been abandoned by all the serious scholars in the field, including those in Arab countries, where the Khazar theory is little used except in occasional political polemics. Another man, Douglas Morton Dunlop, who is cited as, quote, the most esteemed scholar of the Khazar monarchy, end quote, said that the theory that Eastern European Jews were the descendants of the Khazars can, quote, be dealt with very shortly because there is little evidence which bears directly upon it, and it unavoidably retains the character of a mere assumption, end quote. Let me show you some terrific reasons why this theory is wrong. But before I do, it's important to define a few terms, as many of the presentations that try to convince people of this idea seem to be confused on some pretty basic issues. First, there are two main types of Jewish ethnic divisions in the world. They are the Ashkenazi and the Sephardim. The word Ashkenaz means German, and the word Sepharad means Spain. These are the two largest groups. During the 1,000 years of the diaspora, or the dispersion of the Jews from the Middle East, many Jewish communities were established by Jewish settlers in various places around the world, often at great distances from one another, resulting in long-term isolation from each other. These communities would develop under the influence of their local environments. Two main centers of Jewish populations were in modern-day Germany and Spain. Sephardim are Jewish people that settled in and around Spain, although the name now also includes other Jewish ethnic groups that simply worship in the same style that they do. Although the spread of Jews into Spain is most commonly associated with the diaspora, which began after the Roman conquest of Judea in 70 AD, immigration from Judea into the area can be dated before the destruction of Jerusalem. And really, no matter which dates you prefer for the Sephardim settling in Spain, this group settled in Europe long before the Khazar Empire ever existed. Germany was also an area that over time many Jewish people settled in. It became one of the few places in the world that Jewish culture thrived. They established universities and businesses. The term Ashkenazi, although meaning German, later came to refer to a wider region of Eastern European Jews. So what do we know about the Khazars? It's likely that the Khazar nation was made up of tribes from various ethnic backgrounds, as steppe nations traditionally absorbed those that they conquered. Their name is accordingly derived from the Turkic Khaz, meaning to wander or flee, but we don't know much about them for sure. It is known that there was, as the book The 13th Tribe suggests, a conversion of the royal family to Judaism around the year 800. This fact is attested to in various historical sources, although for many years, the only people to claim this was the Jews themselves. In the Jewish Encyclopedia, it states, quote, the conversion of the leading Khazars to Judaism perhaps took place toward 740 CE. Ironically, for many years, it was only the Jews who claimed that this was true. And it wasn't until recently that modern archaeology has proven what the Jewish historians have been saying the whole time. I've heard many people mention this encyclopedia issue as if it somehow confirms that Ashkenaz was founded by the Khazars, but it doesn't at all. It simply states that there was a conversion of the Khazar royal family to Judaism. The amount of people in the country that converted to Judaism with the royals is debated somewhat. Some say it was just the royals and most of the upper nobility. Others say it was the entire country that converted. This seems unlikely because of all the historical accounts of that area being a melting pot of Muslims and Christians as well as Jews after this fact. It really doesn't matter, actually. The question in regard to this theory is, did these people migrate to Europe en masse to become what is known as the Ashkenazi Jews, as Kessler says that they did? There are many ways, actually, to test this theory, so let's take a look at some of them. The first thing that we need to get out of the way is this issue of race versus parentage. Many of the websites and videos that I've watched which attempt to convince people of this theory say simply that the Jews are supposed to be brown, and the Khazars were white, and Ashkenazi Jews are also white, and therefore the case is closed. Now, there's a ton of problems with this idea, and setting aside the idea that these people claim that the Khazars were white, which nobody knows for sure, but Asian characteristics do seem to be the most likely hypothesis. But nevertheless, let me demonstrate how common parentage and race are different. One writer said it this way: let me illustrate this point. If I were to marry an Asian woman and father children who then married other Asians, these children would be my descendants. If that woman were to die and I were to marry an African woman and have children, and they were to marry others of African descent, they would also be my descendants. One set of my descendants would be racially Asian and the other racially African, but they would both be my descendants. Today's Jewish people claim to be, by and large, the community of physical descendants of Abraham and the patriarchs. Whatever their race, race is not the issue. The issue is descent. The fact is that you can't tell who is and who isn't a Jew based on skin color. But thanks to modern technology, we now do have a way to test this. And it will be the first way we will look at to debunk the idea of the 13th tribe. Over the last 10 years, there's been astonishing discoveries in the area of genetic testing that not only destroy any hope of this 13th tribe theory, but also offer dramatic proof to the biblical account of history as well. Genetic testing of both the Ashkenazi and the Sephardim, and even Samaritan Jews, which are the ones that have never left the land of Israel, reveal a common ancestor. And what's even more amazing is that that ancestor traces back to the same area in the Middle East and to the same time in history. There's some finer details about this testing, which we're going to look at in a minute, but I think the most amazing part of this genetic research is in regard to something called the Kohanim. The Kohanim, or people with the last name Cohen, is basically a person that claims to be descended from the biblical person Aaron, who was Moses' brother. They were the priests. And people today that have the last name Cohen are essentially claiming that they are descended from this man 3,000 years ago. And what makes them such good test subjects for this genetic research is that while Jews in general mostly married within their tribes over the years, the Kohanim were ultra particular about this. And even today, there are strict rules about marriage for people of the Cohen line. Another important factor in this is in regard to the nature of the Y chromosome. The Y chromosome is one of two chromosomes that determine the sex of a child, and it is passed from father to son. So, if I had a son, he would inherit a Y chromosome from me and an X chromosome from his mother. And if I had a daughter, she would inherit an X chromosome from me and an X chromosome from her mother. Since Y chromosomes are passed from father to son, all Kohanim men should theoretically have almost identical Y chromosomes. This can be tested with the genealogical DNA test. And in addition, as the rate that mutations accumulate on the Y chromosome is relatively constant, scientists can also estimate the elapsed time since two men had a common ancestor. So they can know the time period when this original man existed. And amazingly, because of the so-called halotype, they can also tell more or less what region in the world this man lived in. Isn't science cool? The Cohen hypothesis was first tested in 1997. In their study, which was published in the journal Nature, they found that genetic similarities appeared to be shared by both Sephardic and Ashkenazi Cohens, pointing to a common Cohen population origin before the Jewish diaspora under the Roman Empire. Many more studies were done with a greater number of test subjects and in many diverse areas in the years that followed that confirmed these initial findings. One recent study published in 2009 demonstrates that 46.1% of Kohanim carry Y chromosomes belonging to a single parental lineage that likely originated in the Near East well before the dispersal of Jewish groups in the diaspora. Support for a Near Eastern origin of this lineage comes from its high frequency in the sampled Bedouins, Yemens, 67%, and Jordanians, 55%, and its precipitous drop in frequency as one moves away from Saudi Arabia and the Near East. Moreover, there is a striking contrast between the relatively high frequency of this gene in Jewish populations and its vanishingly low frequency in the sample of non-Jewish populations that hosted Jewish diaspora communities outside of the Near East. So a Jew may look like its host population, but it is genetically very distinct. I think it's really provocative that they also found this connection with the Cohens that have lived in Israel continuously this whole time, called the Samaritans. They are a very small group of people that broke away from traditional Judaism around the 5th century BC. And they have their own version of Judaism, but interestingly, they claim that their priests descend from the Cohen line as well. And in a 2004 article on genetic ancestry of the Samaritans, it concluded from a sample comparing Samaritans to several Jewish populations, all currently living in Israel, representing Ethiopian Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Iraqi Jews, Libyan Jews, Moroccan Jews, and Yemenite Jews, as well as Druze and non-Druze Palestinian Arabs, that the principal component analysis suggested a common ancestry of the Samaritans and Jewish patrilineages. Most of the former may be traced back to a common ancestor in what is today identified as the paternally inherited Israelite high priesthood, or the Kohanim, with a common ancestor projected to the time of the Assyrian conquest of the Kingdom of Israel. If you think about it, this is such a major blow, not only to the 13th tribe theory, but also to people that claim that Jews don't at least have a claim to the land of Israel, as well as people that claim that the Bible is not historically accurate. There's not a whole lot of people trying to disprove the core findings of this research. Now, there was a paper out about 10 years ago after the first tests were done by a guy named Zusman, who questioned that some of the evidence was being overstated. But those concerns were addressed in the subsequent studies, and even serious critics of Jews are coming to terms with this data. For instance, a man named David Duke, who was a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, who in his book, My Awakening, says that he believes in the Khazar theory, now seems to agree that, quote, genes don't lie. Unfortunately, he seems to be using this new information for negative ends too. Here's a clip from YouTube.
Jews from the different regions of the world were found to share many genetic traits that are distinct from other groups and that date back to ancient times. Now, much Jewish research exists on this subject. Researchers Kobylyansky and Lifshitz examined 25 morphological characteristics and estimated that Jews in Russia were 6 times more genetically distant from Russians than Russians were from Germans. I would never have guessed that Jews were 6 times more distant from Russians and other Europeans than, say, Russians are different from Germans or Frenchmen, or that Italians might be different from Swedes. But genes don't lie. Jewish differences exist whether or not one has the Jewish look. In fact, Jewish genetic difference is far greater under the skin than on the surface.
The point is that the Ashkenazi population, by and large, has the same Jewish genes as the Jewish populations all over the world. And this is the death nail to the theory that the Ashkenazi Jews descended from the Khazars. The entire premise of this theory has been totally shattered. That doesn't mean, however, that the Khazars played absolutely no role in the Ashkenazi community development. As with most lies, they often contain an element of truth. The genetic tests in the Ashkenazi population did show that there was a possible connection to Khazaria or some other genetic influence in a certain percentage of those tested, some say about 12%. This suggests that there was at least some amount of migration of refugees to Europe by Khazarians after the Khazar Empire was taken over, which was to be expected, as it was where most Jews, converts or not, gathered, as it was a major center of Jewish civilization at the time. But these refugees would have been very small, as historians note that the Khazar sovereignty was broken up by Sviatoslav I of Kiev. The Khazars became a subject people of the Kievian Ruses, gradually displaced by the Rus, the Kipchaks, and later the conquering Mongol Golden Horde. The Khazars largely disappeared as a culturally distinct people. But, as we have demonstrated, it doesn't matter anyway. There's no possible way, based on the genetic evidence, that Ashkenazi Jews originated from the Khazars. The Ashkenazi Jews are linked to Jews all over the world by their genes, even though they have different races. Another way to show that this theory is wrong is with language and culture, which, as social sciences, can be very helpful. Yiddish was the language spoken by early Ashkenazi Jews. And it's by tracing the migration of Yiddish that we can also trace the migration of the Ashkenazi Jews after they left the region. Yiddish is a Germanic language with a heavy influence of Hebrew. It also has traces of Latin-derived languages in it. Basically, it's a mix between Hebrew and European languages, and primarily German. And it uses the Hebrew alphabet. It's very similar to that of the Sephardim in Spain and Portugal, who spoke something called Ladino, which is basically a combination of Hebrew and the Latin languages of that region, and it too uses the Hebrew alphabet. The problem is that if the Ashkenazi Jews were descended from the Turks of Khazaria, the Khazars left no evidence of this in the language, which would be completely unheard of in historical linguistics, and it's very hard to believe. Yiddish bears no resemblance to the language of the Turks, and there's no shared vocabulary. This is a pretty big point if you're a linguist, but add to this the absence of any apparent cultural influence, and it's a dramatic leap of faith that the Ashkenazi Jews were descended from a country that has no evidence of it in their language or culture. One might even go so far as to say that such an idea is an impossibility. Another point is made by a commentator saying, those who continue to push forth the theory that Ashkenazi Jews are not real Jews also display a gross ignorance of the Jewish religion concerning the treatment and acceptance of converts. This is either ignored or unknown by those who make the accusation. Although we've already seen the DNA evidence that vindicates modern Jews, even if by some chance they were not ancestrally related, the fact remains, in Judaism, a convert is treated with the utmost respect, and, according to Jewish law, no differentiation is made between a biological, if you will, Jew and a Jewish convert. Even some famous biblical characters, one example being Ruth, an ancestor of King David, were converts to the faith and not born into it as a descendant of Abraham. I, Chris, would even submit that the genealogy in the book of Matthew shows us that Jesus, or Yeshua, was legally descended from this line of Ruth through David, all the way to his stepfather Joseph. But his blood connection to this line comes through his mother, which we find in the genealogy of Luke, which instead of going through the Solomon line, it goes through David's other son Nathan, which masterfully avoids a curse that was put on the line of Jeconiah. Today's Jewish people are by and large the community of physical descendants of a guy named Abraham. Whatever their race, race is not the issue. The issue is descent. Black Ethiopian Jews, blonde Jews from Scandinavia, Jews from India, they're all racially different, but all Jewish. Sure, there's been intermarriage, rape, conversion of Gentiles. Some non-Jews have entered into ethnic Jewry, but at the core, the Jewish community remains descended from patriarchal Israel. Thanks for your time.
Shalom.
So there we have it. It is what it is.
Hey, cheers to you.
Hold on, let me get up out of here.
I come to you today to battle.
There we have it. So hopefully y'all got some understanding and see what's going on. With that being said, you know, for those who want to look in a little bit more on that information, it's always available on YouTube. You can go back and look at it to get the guy's name and all of that and the title and watch it again and get some type of information or some understanding. I'm about to go to sleep. I'm tired. Peace to y'all out there. Peace to y'all households and blessings. I'm out.